Thanks for joining the general meeting. It looks like we've got 17 people joining today. My name's Gianna Patchen. I'm the new chapter coordinator here for the SLO Sierra Club, in case we haven't met yet. And today we have another familiar face, Alex Mintzer, who is the chair of our political committee, joining us to do a wonderful presentation about tropical rainforests of Latin America from his personal experiences getting to enjoy them. And Alex lives in Los Osos here in SLO County and retired 6 years ago from a career as a professor of biology at Cypress College in Orange County. There's some Orange County friends in the audience. Thanks for joining. He received his Ph.D. in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Michigan after completing undergraduate studies at UC Irvine. His main research interest is ant ecology and social behavior, but he assures us that there are only a few ant pictures in this show for those who tend to get itchy. And I will say I am one of those people who gets a little itchy. So thank you, Alex. We're really excited to see slides from your 40 years of travel, from your extensive biology background, and to learn a lot more. So take it
Thank,
away, Alex.
thank you, Gianna, and thank you, Renell, for helping to organize this. I'm privileged to have had the chance to visit the tropical rainforests in 7 different countries of Latin America, and I want to share the experience with you guys. The tropical rainforest is the most diverse land biome on Earth. More species live there than in all the other biomes put together. Um,
Wow.
The there are 3 main areas of tropical rainforest on Earth. Latin America has one, Africa, equatorial Africa is the second, and Southeast Asia and Northern Australia is the third that has this. And these are areas which have constant warm to hot temperatures and abundant rainfall at all times of year, although sometimes the rainfall is heavier in some seasons than in others. I want to say a little bit about the photography that you're going to see here. Some of this goes back 40 years, not an exaggeration. And of course, that's before digital. So I was using a single lens reflex camera, a fairly cheap one, but I was a student or, early on, couldn't afford much more and took pictures on Kodachrome slide film. These were subsequently scanned between 2005 and 2008 to produce JPEG image files, which I'll show tonight. From 2007 through 2022, I used a series of Canon PowerShot point and shoot cameras with up to 20x optical zoom, except for one infrared frame capture, which I used a Sony camcorder video camera, and 2 using a smartphone. They're so versatile, and a spotter scope at the eyepiece. And for the first set of pictures, all the film pictures, I took those after 2007. My wife Carol was with me on all these trips, and she was a full partner in the photography as well. All the pictures were taken in the field. None of them were staged. As you'll see, in some cases, you wouldn't want to stage a poisonous snake or a crocodile or an anaconda. And no photos were taken with a motor or rapid sequence motor drive for the film, like the kind that paparazzi and many other bird photographers use. So it was all patient, wait, and take the picture. Okay, whoa, it's jumped ahead. Let's see if I can get it to go backwards. Yes. Okay, there we go. We're going to start off with pictures from Venezuela, which is a difficult country to visit now because, of course, it is suffering quite a bit. Venezuela is the Tepuy country of
Alex,
Venezuela is the setting for Disney's movie Up. Adventure is out there, and it's a real place. These walls of these mountains, these table mountains, are 3,000 to 5,000 feet high. And it's not an exaggeration to say those waterfalls are falling for thousands of feet, much longer than Yosemite Falls, because of course this is the area where Angel Falls, the world's tallest waterfall, occurs. Let's see if I can get it to do just one. Yeah, there we
hey,
go.
hey, Alex, you're not sharing, unfortunately. I'm not seeing your screen. Is anyone else seeing them?
I see it on my end.
I do
Oh,
too.
okay, great. Just
I
me.
see it.
Figured out.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, you can check the chat and see what's happening there. But we got one more person coming in now, and he's from
Yep,
Arizona.
I got it. I got it.
Okay. One of the things in the South American region is you have the two great watersheds, the Amazon watershed and the Orinoco. These are large rivers because, of course, they're draining vast acreage, and they have with abundant rainfall. Typically, tropical rainforests get somewhere between 80 and 200 inches of precipitation a year. And like I said, there really isn't a dry season. That's what distinguishes them from tropical deciduous forests. Um, they get rain all through the year, although in some months they may predictably get less or more rain than otherwise. And the rivers of the watershed are used for transportation. Historically, dugout canoes, boats of various sorts, even paddle wheel steamers were used, just like on the Mississippi, to get up and down this river from the Atlantic Ocean, almost 3,000 miles due west to literally to the foothills of the Andes. Some of the rivers in South America are what are called blackwater rivers, and these are significant because they tend to harbor fewer biting flies and mosquitoes, which can vector diseases down there. Blackwater is also, you can find it in the northern United States, in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan. It turns the water about the color of Guinness or dark beer, and like beer, it foams. And so this is a Blackwater Rapids at Canaima National Park in Venezuela. It's a truly awesome place to visit. It's a shame that it's so difficult and challenging to visit there now with all the economic and political problems they've had over the last decade or more. Further south, you have the Amazon basin proper, and here is the Madre de Dios River in Peru. Amazonia covers a huge amount of land surface, almost about as much as the United States east of the Rockies, and all the rivers are big. You can see here that the river has come down a little bit in its, as this picture was taken early towards the end of the rainiest period, and the river comes down, but it never dries out. So this is early dry season, and it still looks pretty lush. So this is a view showing in the Amazon basin. Of course, what drives this is abundant rainfall. You get these warm, moist air that holds a lot of moisture. It is heated by the intense midday sun, which is more intense there than anywhere else. It rises and forms clouds by convection, leading to thunderstorms. In some cases, this warm, moist air current bumps up against mountains, for example, the Andes, or in New Guinea, the highlands there, and it is further lifted orographically and forms these dense clouds, which lead to powerful rainstorms. You can almost set your clock during much of the year in the tropics. The day will start out often very nice and fair. You know though that you got to get your work and your activities and your field work done before 2 or 3 in the afternoon, because after that time the clouds start to build, they swell, distant rumbles of thunder come closer, and then the rain comes down, a drenching rain for 1 to 3 hours. Typical daily amounts are anywhere from 1/3 of an inch to 2 inches of rain falling in a day. When that's repeated over long periods of time, it sure adds up. Here's a storm coming off the Osa Peninsula of southwestern Costa Rica, and again showing the columns of rain that come in. Normally, if you're in the forest, you don't see this because the sky is blocked off by canopy. You're more likely to hear it, either the thunder or the rain actually falling onto the leaves in the canopy. Along all rivers there in South America and Central America, you may find evergreen gallery forest. This is a secondary forest where the forest is allowed to develop. And this picture shows first the trees that grow here. They grow pretty much straight up. There's an intense competition by these trees to reach the sunlight. And it is a matter of life and death for the seedlings and saplings as they grow, whether they can succeed. And so they try to put on height as quickly as they can, and then they only branch at the top. to produce leaves when they reach the sunlight. So this sort of is a kind of neat picture because it's sort of like a cross-section slice through a rainforest to see what you've got. But in many cases, they'd be even taller than this. We're going to see trees today which are from 30 yards up to 70 to almost 80 yards high in various places. Oop, back that up. I wanted to include this picture here because, of course, people are well aware that for the last half century, there's been great concerns about the clearing of the rainforest. And it is a big concern in Latin America, although Costa Rica is doing a lot to protect the rainforest they have. In some of the other countries, like Brazil, have made renewed pledges under their new administration of Lula da Silva to do a better job as well. Sometimes when they clear for pasture, they leave a couple of the big trees. And this is a case in Costa Rica where you can actually see what the rainforest emergent giant trees look like. These trees are probably 70 to 80 yards tall. You can see they grow straight up and then they branch at the top. And these branches are big enough to completely cover and shade a tennis court. So it's a big tree. I sometimes told my students this tree is only about 1/5 the size of the one in the film Avatar, but that's still a pretty big tree. At the base here, these buttresses are for this tree are at least 20 feet across, and for this one at least 25 feet across. But you can see this is how they would grow up, and this is where the photosynthesis happens, the magic of photosynthesis. Looking at a more intact forest, you can see big trees and a variety of diversity of trees that you don't find anywhere else on Earth. The tree on the right here at Barro Colorado Island is so big that you could imagine driving a VW bug, a beetle, or a bocho inside the trunk of this through this volume. So this tree is 7 to 8 feet in diameter all the way up here, massive tree in this forest. And the diversity, as I mentioned, is pretty amazing. Here's a picture of a ceiba tree in bloom, and this was taken in May, towards the end of the wettest period of the year. And this again illustrates that this is the canopy covered with flowers, and the trunk is hidden in this gallery forest down behind. Looking at the forest of the Osa Peninsula, and looking out towards the Golfo de Dulce here and mainland Costa Rica, the diversity in a picture like this, you probably have over 100 different species of trees in this landscape, this view. That's a lot. If you think about any forest in the United States, no matter how pristine, it typically will only have between 5 and maybe 20, 25 different species of trees at the most extreme case in southern Appalachian forests. But the tropical rainforest is easily 4 to 5 times that many different kinds of trees that are found, and each tree has its own annual cycle for when it produces new leaves. That one there looks a little bare. They will produce new leaves because moisture is generally available throughout the year. The tropical rainforest produces its own weather and its own climate. In a view like this one here, you're looking from the lowlands down towards the ridges. And in this view here, this forest here will transpire through a natural process thousands of tons of invisible water vapor into the atmosphere every day. And as the water vapor leaves the plants, it condenses to form these little scud clouds here, which are an indication of this process. This water vapor then rises in the atmosphere, and with the heating of the day, it becomes the raw material for the thunderstorms that form with convection. So this is a virtuous cycle. Here's the same view looking from above, looking down towards the Gulf. And you can see the low scud clouds here that show this. And when the forest is cut, of course, in large scale defoliation, this breaks this virtuous cycle. Less water is transpired into the atmosphere. It's not the same if it evaporates from mud. And you have less water available to generate the day's clouds, storms, and rainfall. All right, it's time for animals, and we're going to start with the cuties. What you're looking at here, as some of you already know, is a poison dart frog. In particular, this is a harlequin poison dart frog. which we found clinging to a ledge above a pool. And you gotta love those little cute green toes on this frog. How big is this frog? It's about 1.5 inches in size. Here's another cutie. The poison dart frogs, of course, are famous because their skin is very toxic if they live on a natural rainforest diet, because many of these frogs rely on consuming ants and other arthropods as a source of compounds that they can either sequester or metabolize to produce toxins, which they then sequester in their skin. This is a frog. You certainly wouldn't want to lick it unless you had a death wish. You wouldn't want to eat it. And it's better off for the frog and for you if you don't touch frogs of any sort when you see them out in nature, because their skin is fairly delicate. What a beauty. Here's another poison dart frog from Costa Rica. Striking colors. Some of you have seen this species of frog at insect zoos or zoos or natural history museums and exhibits, but this one we found out in the forest. And what a striking coloration. This is the frog that is found in the Atlantic regions of Costa Rica. It's nicknamed the blue jeans frog for obvious reasons. And it is also one of these poison dart frogs. This frog is a little bit smaller, maybe total body length of just 1 inch. What a cutie. This is a much bigger frog. This is the size of your hand, Leptodactylus, which makes booming calls in the evenings and early at night. Yeah, that's such a cutie. Oops. Here's a frog that we found, took a picture of with infrared. I don't know if the frog can see us, but we could certainly see it. And our last frog picture is a frog on a philodendron, probably the same sort of philodendron that you can grow in Southern California outdoors as a large ornamental. Now, I have only one fish picture, but of course, this is the fish you want to know about, the piranha. And yes, it's pronounced piranha. The H in Portuguese gets turned into an I, sort of like if you've ever had the cocktail, the caipirinha, which is the same sort of spelling. And they are found in the Amazon watershed, in this case in the Madre de Dios portion of it. And I am not the one handling this fish. We caught these fish with monofilament line, baited with chunks of beef stew meat with a traditional fish hook. And it wasn't too hard to do to get a bite from these guys. So these are piranha. Let's go to look at snakes. And of course, each species of snake is typically active during the day or at night, or sometimes only in the morning or in the evening. They have their schedules. And just like people, snakes sleep. And so this was one found at night, sleeping up in a tree. Pretty neat. Up here, I'll highlight it, is a boa constrictor up in the top of the canopy. These snakes are muscular and they do a lot of their foraging up in the trees where they hunt for prey. Of course, as you know, these guys are constrictors. They kill their prey by surrounding it, looping coils around it, and restricting the prey's ability to move and to breathe, thereby suffocating or asphyxiating it before they consume it. So this is a boa constrictor. This snake is probably about 8 feet long, maybe 4 to 5 inches in diameter here at the middle. And we were just lucky to get this picture. This was with a 20x optical zoom lens on the point and shoot. Poisonous snakes. Here's a tree viper from Costa Rica again. Generally, if you want to see poisonous snakes in Latin America, go to Costa Rica. It is an outstanding place, as you'll see, to see snakes of all sorts, or many sorts, and certainly the poisonous snakes. And this was one obviously not staged at all. This one also was not staged. This is the fertile ants, the famous fertile ants, in Spanish, the terciopelo, alongside a trail in Costa Rica. It's a beautiful snake. I mean, let's just give it credit. That is one awesome snake. And of course, you want to find it before when you're traipsing along, always look where you're putting your feet and your hands, so you don't panic this snake. And in its fright, it'll be frightened of you. It could bite out. But in this case here, we saw it. We were able to avoid and going past it this way. All right, this one here is from Peru. You don't see this in Costa Rica. This is an anaconda here. There's the snake here. It's probably 10 to 12 feet long. I'd say 5 to 6 inches in diameter here. It's not a very good picture, but I was taking it from a canoe, and I really didn't feel like getting out of the canoe, traipsing up across the brush here to, check out so I could get a picture of the head of the anaconda. It didn't seem like a really good idea. So I took what I could get. And actually, this pattern of dark olive spots on a lighter green-gray body is pretty diagnostic for this snake. And it is also a constrictor, spends most of its life in the water, certainly associated with waterways like creeks and rivers. Did I skip one there? I'm not sure. I think that may be it on that one. Okay. Moving on to lizards, I'm going to include one of the less frequently shown. A lot of people show pictures of the green iguanas, which are common in the tropics, and they've been introduced even into places like Florida. I decided to go with the spiny black iguana instead. This lizard is only about 30 inches long. Still, compared to U.S. lizards, that's a big lizard. So the green spiny iguana, this species would be an omnivore, feeding on insects, smaller lizards and snakes, amphibians, and probably eggs when it can get hold of those. The crocodiles. The American crocodile, there are a few left in southern Florida near Everglades National Park, but otherwise they've been extirpated from the United States. But from the tropics of Mexico south into South America, you can still find the American crocodile. It is a large crocodilian, full-sized, as big as the Australian saltwater crocodile. These will get up to 6 meters in length with a body weight of over 1,000 pounds. And this one here is sort of looking and saying, come on in, the water's fine. You want to check this out. This picture here, again, I don't stage crocodiles, but this one was only about 7 feet long. So I figured with more confidence, I could approach it close enough to get a picture. This was not taken with a zoom lens. I pretty much filled the image with this crocodile. Caiman or caiman. The caiman is a smaller crocodilian, which is widespread in the tropical rainforests of Central and South America. It's typically only gets up to 4 to 6 feet in length, but it's very common, hides out. It's a smaller predator than the big crocodile. And when you shine a flashlight at night, the eyes glow red. Of course, all these crocodilians have that feature. You can find them, you count the number of glowing eyes and divide by 2 to figure out how many crocodilians you have in your vicinity. Birds. I'm not much of an ornithologist, but I thought I would go show you some pictures. As some of you guessed, this is in the family that includes the toucans. This is a collared araucary. It's an elegant bird which doesn't get shown quite as often, but it's pretty amazing. The bird is a little over a foot from the tip of its bill to the tip of the tail feathers. A collared araucary. And I have the next picture, because these are so awesome as one, why not have 4 of them? So this is from the La Selva Rainforest Station, and they're just, what can you say? The birds are very, very classy. This one here is grooming. It has its, you can see there's the eye on that one. Woodpeckers, like this species here, they look very similar to woodpeckers you might see anywhere in North America. The species composition may be a little different. This bird is so pretty, I had to include it because it posed for a picture at La Selva Station in Costa Rica. What a beauty. A hummingbird, and resplendent in plumage. Of course, biodiversity of hummingbirds goes up quite a bit as you get into the tropical rainforests. Some hummingbird species are migrants, and they come north in the summertime from tropical rainforest homes into the southern United States. The greatest biodiversity of hummingbirds is actually in the upland cloud forests, same as for orchids, rather than down in the lowland rainforests. And of course, I had to include one toucan. This is the famous toucan of Central America, keeled-billed toucan. Um, and again, this bird is probably about 18 inches or 60 centimeters in body length, as you see it here in the forest. I didn't get any good pictures of the resplendent quetzal, which is the iconic bird, the national bird of Guatemala, and was a bird revered by the Aztecs in Central America and Mexico. But I did manage to find a feather, and even the feather is pretty resplendent. When you find a feather like this, you've got to take a picture of that, even if the picture of the bird is hard to get. Of course, we got to show some macaws because they are big. This is the scarlet macaw, the most common macaw species in Central America. Um, and it's probably from the forehead of the bird here to the tip of the tail is probably close to a meter, 3 feet. And these, of course, are the birds that show up very often in nature documentaries and at theme parks like Disney, for example, may have these in various places. Their sounds, which is sort of a roaring screech, echo across the rainforest, almost sounding dinosaur-like, Jurassic Park-like. Finding the birds themselves in the forest is a little bit harder, and so this picture was taken with a zoom to get these as they were perching 100 feet or more above our head. The scarlet macaw, beloved bird in Costa Rica. Further south, there are other species of macaw. This is the blue and yellow macaw taken in Peru. Again, hard to get pictures of this, but enough to show that it has these tail feathers here. Again, about the same size, and yes, blue and yellow. Watson's. This is a bird that's commonly known as the stink bird because it has a unique digestive system with a unique gut flora. And this makes its poop extra stinky, hence the name stink. It's poop and it's how shall I put it? It's gaseous emissions, extra stinky. So hence the common name stink bird. Nobody eats them. They're very common in swampy areas like this estuary, but it's still an amazing bird, and it's a lineage that is separate from most other bird lineages. So you have to go back a long way in the bird family tree to find a common ancestor for these and some of the other birds. And here we have the speckled chachalaca from Peru. What can I say about this bird? It's often confused with its near relative, the boom chachalaca. And sorry about that. But this is another common or bird in the forest. Sloths. This picture of a sloth is not the greatest. I have a better one in a minute, you'll see. But this picture is important because it shows the sloth in one of its favorite trees, which is Cecropia. Now, a few of you guys know that Cecropia often harbors colonies of aggressive ants. And this sloth is up here, and you'd think if there were swarms of aggressive ants, it would be harassed by these ants. But if you look at the foliage of this Cecropia, you can see it looks very poor. It's suffered a lot of insect damage here, which tells me that this tree does not have a functional ant colony. It either never got one or it lost its ant colony. So the sloth is up here and has pretty much a free meal in that regard. Here's another picture of a sloth, better color, more and relaxing, literally resting on a bed of orchids. This is in the La Selva rainforest and the Atlantic side of Costa Rica. What a cutie. The largest rodent in the world, the capybara, is found in South America. It gets as far north as southern Panama. And this rodent here, this one here is probably about 30 inches from one end to the other. This is a big rodent. and it probably weighs about 20 to 30 pounds. They get bigger than this, though. They can get up to 4 to 5 feet in size. So the largest living rodent in the world today. Quadrimundi. Quadrimundi is a relative of the raccoon. It lives in social groups, extended families, and you may encounter them as they move as a group across the forest floor, occasionally moving up in the trees to move through some of the lateral branches. But they definitely don't spend as much time up there as the monkeys do. And they're omnivores, just like raccoons. They feed on eggs, insects, lizards, frogs, uh, small snakes. This is an animal that's about 30 inches long. It's so similar in size to a raccoon, which if you've encountered one, it can get to be a pretty big animal. So they could feed on other small mammals as well and birds that they might encounter. Quadrimundi. The monkeys. I have pictures of all four of the main groups of Central American monkeys. The first one is the capuchin monkey, and which seems to have a food item here that it did not get from a tourist. So capuchin monkey is common in the lowlands of Costa Rica. Squirrel monkeys are the smallest of monkeys that are found, and they typically spend their whole lives up in the canopy. Um, Other people warned me that sometimes the squirrel monkeys will throw feces down at you from on high, but I never had this problem. At least this one here seems to be curious to see what I was doing. So squirrel monkeys are the second of the main monkey groups that are found in Central America. And there are squirrel monkey species in South America as well. The howler monkey. This is a male, a large male, and of course, they're the ones which are responsible for the howling sound. On a calm, clear morning, the sound carries for miles. It sounds like a roaring together with the screech of the macaws. This is one of the defining sounds of the tropical rainforest that these produce. And this is a fairly large monkey. I would say, hard to say how much this animal would weigh. Um, I'd say easily 40 to 50 pounds. Big, fairly big monkey. The last group of monkeys is the spider monkeys. And the spider monkeys also spend most of their time up in the trees. And if you look closely, you can see that this one is collecting some fruits. There are some fruits here that it is reaching for. And the monkeys are pretty, by and large, herbivores. They're feeding on leaves, nuts, fruits, flowers, things like that that they know where to find in various trees at different times of years in the forest. Now we move on to this is the one slide I'm going to show of fungi, only one, but it's a good one. These are basidiomycetes, which is the group of fungi that includes mushrooms and bracket fungi. But these are just classier than anything we have in the United States. I mean, you look at these and they're just awesome. You had to have a picture of these. Are they magic mushrooms? Well, it's not a good idea to just go and sample mushrooms out in the woods. But they sure look pretty awesome. And where's the spider? Well, here's a small spider right here. Nothing too impressive. Here's a bigger spider. Okay, a 4-inch or 10-centimeter tarantula. This picture is as close as I came to staging. I put a light from a headlamp on it to brighten it up. But you can be sure if you're in the rainforest, there are tarantulas around, although most of the time they're hidden. And like just about everything else, they are more scared of you than you should be of them. Not that I'd go and pet all of them because they do have irritating hairs on their body, but don't freak. Stay calm. The moths are classier in the tropics. These are moths coming to a light here, and you just look at the pattern on their wings here. They just look like they're dressed up in evening wear, a little bit more formal perhaps than the moths we get our ways. Classy moths. The butterflies are classier. Now, many of you guys have visited butterfly houses at insect zoos or natural history museums, and you've seen how they curate those live butterflies. And some of you marveled as they landed on a plate of fruit or something like that, and you could see a cluster of butterflies in a greenhouse. Essentially, is what that is, where the butterflies are restricted. This picture was taken out in nature, and we've got at least 4 classy species of butterflies here. Total of at least 5 different species of them. And what are these butterflies doing? Well, this is along a riverbank, and it's likely that because the water table is high, water is moving up and it's carrying salts. And these butterflies are probably feeding on some of the salts, which help them maintain balance in their life. They're meet some of their trace micronutrients. But we've got one classy blue butterfly here, blue and black, elegant, a classy red butterfly here. This one here is the famous 89 or 98 butterfly that shows up in many pictures from rainforests. This one's pretty classy too. There are 2 of these. And then we have some white butterflies over here. But still, butterflies are amazing. And I don't even have morpho pictures. I didn't put any in. I could have put some of those in too. All right, now to blow your mind on ants. I told you I would show some pictures. I'll keep the itchiness to a minimum for you guys here. This person standing here, this picture was taken in 1984. He's currently a professor of entomology at the University of Utah. And he's 6 feet tall. So up to that, he's 8 or 9 feet, 8 feet, let's say. And he's pointing to an ant nest. And just to show you, it's hanging from this branch. This ant nest is 9 feet long, comes down like a big stalactite or a shark's tooth. It's attached to this branch, and it's 4 feet across, 4 to 5 feet across here in this structure. This was made by ants in the genus Azteca that are essentially the same size as the ones that come into your kitchen. So your ants in your kitchen are definitely underachievers compared to what these guys do. Here's another nest made by the same genus of ants in Costa Rica. And you can see, what is it made of? It's made of carton fibers, sort of the same process that paper wasps, like hornets, will use to make their nest of paper. In this case, though, the scale is so much bigger. This one here looks like it's covered with a structure that is like shingles, which actually makes sense because these are in an area where they're going to get wet every day. And the ants definitely want to control the amount of water that gets into their nest. So what a better idea than having overlapping shingles to shed the water down off this carton nest. Army ants. Okay, maximum itchiness. What you're looking at here is a mass of army ants about the size of a volleyball or a basketball, a bivouac. And they have temporary nests. And the army ants are exclusively carnivorous, and they move their nest location frequently, often every day. And these army ants don't have a permanent nest. They instead construct a living nest that's called a bivouac, or was called that here. Um, and you can see the individual ants, and deep in the middle of this will be the queen, where she is kept well protected, and the ant brood as well. And from these bivouacs, the ants will move out in the morning to seek prey in conspicuous raids. And then if they want to relocate to another place, they'll relocate during the night, the following night. So these Eciton army ants, if you've been to a tropical rainforest in Latin America, you will see these guys. Switching from complete carnivory to herbivory, we've got the leaf-cutting ants, the other type of ant, which everybody will see who visits a tropical rainforest. This is Atocephalotes here. And these guys collect leaves. They carry them back in these splendid trails, which I could show you videos and all sorts of stuff, and then we'd be here all night. And they carry them back into their nests here. This one is the size of a major league ballpark pitcher's mound. Thousands of pounds of excavated soil on top of this. Deep underground, they have chambers that may be the size, again, of a basketball or a volleyball or even bigger, beach ball, which they take the leaves and use them to nurture a special symbiotic fungus. It's agriculture, and these ants have been doing this for over 10 million years, since well before a time when there were even old human ancestors, let alone recent ones. Leaf-cutting ants, Atocephalotes, is the premier rainforest species. Now, a little bit on agriculture and how not to do it. In Brazil, they brought over eucalyptus from Australia. And because eucalyptus will grow very well in the warm, humid climate of Brazil, and they can, from that, harvest pulpwood, which they can use to make all sorts of useful products. What they didn't realize, though, is that eucalyptus evolved where there are no leaf-cutting ants or their fungi. So eucalyptus has no evolved protections against leaf cutting ants. Now, those of you who know eucalyptus trees know that something is very wrong here because eucalyptus trees are evergreen. They always keep their leaves. And in fact, in this place, nearly all the leaves have been stripped. Eucalyptus farming turned out to be a disaster in areas where Atta levigata was able to survive land clearing. And as a result, Atta levigata made beautiful nests here. This one's big enough again to park a VW Beetle inside this splendid, wonderful nest here. And that's a very much younger me from about 35 years ago. I won't tell you how old I was when that picture was taken down in Brazil. Now, that's it for the ants. Now we're going to talk about bees and wasps. Stingless bees are common in the tropics around the world. They were domesticated by the Maya in Central America, and they do produce honey. They do build honeycombs. They come in a variety of sizes, from little tiny forms that are only an eighth of an inch long, barely bigger than sweat bees, up to bees that are about the size of a honeybee, typically living in hollows and trees, a diversity of species. Here's an apiary in Brazil where they actually are caring for some of these rainforest bees that can survive the transition into a nest box. Stingless bees, they're not defenseless either. If you mess with them and you mess with the wrong species, the workers will fly, grab a hold of your hair, crawl down the shaft of the hair to the scalp and the follicle, and they'll smear a caustic secretion on your scalp as they bite. And it's a very unpleasant sensation when you have a half dozen or more of these things get rooting themselves deep into your scalp like living animated caustic burrs. Wasps. This looks like a piñata hanging high in a tree, but only a fool would whack this piñata because it's a wasp nest that's about a yard, almost a meter high, up in the top of a tree in the Osa Peninsula. You have to know which wasps you can approach. This one was not taken as a zoom picture because this species is much smaller. It's only about a quarter of an inch long, very petite wasps. The nest is about the size of a large mango. And um, and these guys were perfectly content to let me get up close nearby them as long as I kept my mouth shut, literally. They don't like bees, and wasps don't like the breath of humans. If you're around bees, keep your mouth shut for a few obvious reasons. Here's another nest, may give some of you an itchiness a little bit. Polybiine wasp nest. This is about the size and shape of a backpack. So the wasps here are close to an inch long, and there are a lot of them here. And these wasp nests last for many years. Unlike the wasps that we have in the United States, which die every winter, these nests may last for a whole series of years. Termites. We have termites. Uh, this is, if you go to the tropics in Latin America, you will see nests of Nasuda These hang up in the trees. Um, they are made again with vegetable fibers that have also been cemented together with fecal material by the termites. So it makes a very tough, durable covering, which keeps the termites inside nice and moist and keeps the heat and any potential predators out. This nest would be connected to the ground and to other parts of the tree with little runways here. These black lines here are covered runways that allow the termites to access other parts of the tree. And this is just a close-up of that nest to show you what they look like. They're typically, this might be get up to 2 feet across and 4 feet from this side to the other. So termites, Nuzuta termes, are very common. And this termite is sort of unique because the soldiers have a squirt gun mounted on the front of their head. So they actually can spray a noxious secretion when they need to defend the colony. Plants. Let's talk a little bit about plants. Orchids and many other plants are usually up in the canopy. So when you're down low, you're not going to see them along with a lot of the birds and many other things because there's a whole different flora up there in the canopy. So I was fortunate that I was able to find this epidendrum at Canaima National Park, a beautiful orchid, um, and uh, and especially good that I could figure out what genus it was. Um, and So you do see orchids. There are a lot of species, but they're usually up high. When you see them is when they have fallen to the ground. Somehow as part of a tree fall or a fallen branch, it'll bring down the orchids. Of course, these orchids are not parasites living up there. They're not like mistletoe. They are just gaining access to more fresh air, better air circulation, and also improved sunlight conditions. From the very big to the very small. This is an incredibly tiny orchid, again on tree fall in Costa Rica. That's my thumb. Um, and This orchid is mature because it is blooming. Um, this type of orchid here, which I believe is in the pleurophthalid group, um, it rivals duckweed as the smallest existing flowering angiosperm plant. These are incredibly tiny. It's a mature plant. Here's one that looks like spent its bloom, another one here that's going to bloom. Pretty amazing. Another beautiful orchid in La Selva in Costa Rica. Tiny pleurophthalid orchid. This one here might be about 5 millimeters across and a centimeter, or about a third of an inch from top to bottom here. Um, Tiny pleurophthalid orchid. The number of orchid species in Latin America is in the thousands. And I was very privileged to see the Latin American lady slipper orchid in Ecuador. This is a bigger flower. It's probably about 7 or 8 inches across from one end to the other. Um, Phragmipedium. And I've seen orchid fanciers who grow these in their collections, but to actually get a chance to see it out in nature was pretty amazing. The Latin American lady slipper orchid. Another orchid, Lake Gatun is part of the Panama Canal system through the middle of Panama. And this picture was taken with me standing up in a kayak, which is not recommended, especially in waters that have crocodiles in them. But I got lucky and the crocodiles were small. And this I believe also is in the genus Epidendrum as well. This picture here, I believe this is in the genus Columnia. Um, this was a species like this was featured by David Attenborough in one of his nature programs. Um, these red markings are not accidental. They are not plant pathology. They're an evolved feature that attract the attention of hummingbirds, and the hummingbirds, the flowers are down here. The hummingbirds will come, they see this, and this is a marker that lets them know that the flowers are here. We just don't have plants like this up here in the United States that do this. So these are true leaves, they're not flowers. Heliconia is often associated with Hawaii and the tropics, but they are not native to Hawaii any more than plumeria is native to Hawaii. They're native to Latin America, and Heliconia is common in the forests. It's in the same family as the bananas and the bird of paradise. Um, and These are these colorful bracts. What you're seeing here is mainly bracts. The flowers are those little guys there that are sticking out of the flowers. And of course, these are also pollinated by hummingbirds. No trip is complete without a picture of a passion flower. This one's about 6 inches across, just a gorgeous flower. They're found throughout the warmer parts of the world, in all tropical regions. Just to acquaint you with the business parts of this flower, these structures here, the green structures, there are 5 of them, are the male parts of the flower. The red tips, the structures here, are the female parts, so the pollen gets transferred to these stigma tips, and then it grows down the style, down through this continuing part of the style, and the ovary is hidden from view here. And if it's fertilized and the conditions are right, you get a passion fruit. Yummy. I'm going to close out this talk tonight with pictures from Chiapas, Mexico, and the Yucatan, Quintana Roo in Mexico, talking about humans in the rainforest. And humans have had a long history. Some very large civilizations were anchored in tall tree evergreen forests. Not just the Maya in Central America, but also the Angkor civilization in Kampuchea or Cambodia, whichever one you want to call, also anchored in a similar sort of forest. And these civilizations did extensive land clearing and supported populations of hundreds of thousands to millions of people. So it's thought that at the time of the peak of the Maya civilization, there was less tropical vegetation intact than there is now. After the civilization has collapsed and many of the areas here have been protected, the Lacandon rainforest here. Um, and so this is, if you get a chance, go and visit. I don't know if they let you climb on it, but it's still well worth seeing. And here's the Cobal archaeological site in Quintana Roo, Mexico. Climbing up the steps. This one, again, they let you climb up at the time when I took these pictures. And from the top, you get a great view out over the rainforest of the area. And so this is, and you can see Yucatan is really flat. So I think this brings my talk to an end, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's right. And I'm going to stop the screen sharing and come back in and um, see if anybody has any questions.
I had a question. I'm wanting to know what that boa constrictor could possibly find up in a tree. I guess he's eating birds.
Oh, there's all sorts of things that the boa constrictor could find. It could find nests of birds. It could find other sleeping animals. It could go into tree hollows, of which there are a lot, and it could find amphibians. It could find birds. It could find lizards. There are a lot of possibilities. I don't think the boa constrictor feeds on insects. That's prey which is beneath its scope. But actually, a lot of things go up in the trees because there's a lot up there. There are a lot of times a visitor to the tropical rainforest wants to get up into the canopy, whether it's zip lining or otherwise, to get a look at the thing. So there's lots of food up there. There's a lot of animal biomass up there. Maybe even sloths. They're too
Wow.
slow.
All right.
Can anybody else unmute themselves?
So Alex, were these primarily academic trips?
They were primarily academic trips up through the first set. All the pictures which I took with the on film, those were pure academic trips. After that time, a couple of the trips I would call pure academic, and then the others were trips which were more of a vacation nature. Well, maybe vacation isn't the right word, education nature. And Carol could speak to that, she came along and she was a great field assistant. She still is a great field assistant. But it isn't quite fair to have her in the forest day after day after day, doing stuff. So yeah.
Yeah,
And
how long were you in the field? So what's the longest you were ever in the field?
longest I've ever been in the field. Well, I never, well, actually, I shouldn't say I never slept in a tropical forest. I did once for about 8 days. Other times I've spent 3 months straight in Costa Rica. And so that's the longest time I've spent, and that was 6 years ago. And I'd go back to visit. We will see if that happens, depending on how Carol's health does. Questions, preguntas.
I'm wondering if you could explain more about the agriculture that the leafcutter ants do.
Oh,
That-
yeah, I can explain a lot more about that. The leafcutter ants have entered into a mutualism, which is a type of symbiosis. It's an ecological win-win with particular species of fungi. And the leaf cutting ants have evolved a series of behaviors to collect or cut leaves of various sorts, or vegetable matter, organic matter. They will bring these back into their nest. They break it up into pieces of varying size, typically 1 to 2 millimeter little flakes, which they add to ridges along the edges of their fungus gardens. And the fungus is typically a pure culture of one species. It can be cultured artificially, just to bring a little more science in there. You can take a sterile culture and grow it on sabarod potato dextrose agar, which is a fairly common medium that's available, but it grows very slowly in sterile culture. It'll take grow to the size of a dime, it'll take it like a month, whereas good old black bread mold will grow to the size of a dime overnight, uh, pretty much. So it's a slow growing fungus. It doesn't occur elsewhere in nature, as far as we know, except with these ants. And the ants recognize this fungus when you see them and they approach a piece of this fungus, they turn to it right away from close distance. And you can definitely tell as they tap it, they're recognizing it. It has and this is a partnership that goes back a long time. Do you have a follow-up, Gianna?
No, that was awesome. Thanks for diving
Yeah.
more.
Okay. Yeah. It's an ant that's near and dear to my heart.
Alex?
Yes.
Yeah, when we were in Costa Rica, we were with a guide and he reached down and picked up some ants, was it, or termites?
Termite.
Termites. And he said, "Here, have some." And he popped them in his mouth.
Yeah.
And yeah, we ate some and they weren't bad, but
I ate some.
I ate some too.
Oh,
So,
did you?
yeah. You ever run across the termites and have a meal?
Um, not, I have eaten termites, to be sure, but I'm thinking it was more likely in savanna areas where I tried them, where termites are even more dominant and you see so many of them. But they're definitely, you can stir fry with them. I mean, if you have them in a wok or a large skillet with your oil of choice, and you can add slivered almonds and various other things and spices of your choice, and you can definitely prepare a dish. The termites will add bring a sort of nutty taste to that. And there's some other things that do that too. But insects are loaded in protein. They aren't plants, so they don't technically have fiber, but they are certainly loaded in protein and a good amount of fat as well. So they're a good high quality nutrient source. Ask any neighborhood frog. And other questions?
Yes, Alex, Alonso here. You shared some photos of Roraima in Venezuela.
Yes,
It's my
Roraima.
understanding, right? It's my understanding that those are some of the oldest geological formations in the planet, and that's why they are so eroded that
Yes.
they have this tabletop shape type thing. Has that created a lot of endemism up there?
Yes, I did not get to go up on top to see that, but there is quite a bit of endemism, uh, and it's a climate up there on top which is very challenging. It's chilly, it's very foggy and windy and rainy. Um, but yes, there have been any number of expeditions that have found quite a bit of endemism up there. You're right.
All right, thanks.
I have a question for the group instead of Alex. Any of you be interested in hearing more specifically about the ants that he's researched for how many years, Alex?
A lot. 40 plus years. Almost
Because
40. Yeah.
maybe I'm the only one, but I'm actually genuinely intrigued about the ants. We sat in a restaurant, the four of us, I don't know when it was, probably a year ago, and you just scratched the surface and they're fascinating. And I knew that beforehand, but I don't know. I just wonder if anybody else would be interested in a similar presentation on the ants. Anyway, I would, yeah, okay, great. So some other people too. I figured as much. So if you'll consider it, Alex.
Yeah, that one may take the form of videos, a lot of videos that I can show, video clips, because with ants,
That would be fun.
it's fun to see them doing stuff. And
Oh.
yeah, that I can totally do.
Okay. All right.
And
Yeah, maybe next year.
including ours from the Moro Dunes here, which is a pretty amazing story in its own
Oh,
right. Although it's kind of sobering. It's not a
oh.
happy story like the monarch butterflies along our coast. It's a story of subterfuge, a little bit more Game of Thrones. But
Hmm.
that's a long story for another time. Other
Alex?
questions? I think we have a little bit more time.
Hi, Alex. I was just curious if you've ever done super close-ups using a not a telescope, a microscope, microscopic photography
Well,
of
for
the
obvious
ants.
reasons, it wouldn't have applied to anything I showed today.
Yeah.
This was all in the field. I have done some microscopic photography where, although usually it was using what you would call a dissecting or stereoscope rather than a compound microscope, because a dissecting or stereoscope pretty much lets me see what I need to see. And I did do that sort of photography because I did a project once where I had to estimate the area, how big the initial fungus gardens of these ants were. And so I would take pictures with a grid through a stereoscope, and then I could, trace it. This was back in the 80s. This was 40 years ago. We didn't have nice technology then. I had to trace it on the tracing paper, and then, add up all the squares to see how much fungus they had. So yes, I have, but only with that kind of microscope. Other questions?
Alex, just a comment. This is a great presentation for kids too. I've watched Up probably 50 times with my granddaughter. She'd enjoy seeing that.
Yeah. Well, I've been very privileged to have had a chance to go down, spend time in these places, and have a good eye, and to wait and spot and see things, and then with some knowledge of photography. Certainly in the early days, there was no automatic exposure with the old Pentax. Point and shoot makes it a little bit easier, but
That
still.
was great.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And thanks to Carol for her contribution.
Yeah.
Several of us on this call know that Carol is quite the photographer herself.
Yes, she took, as I acknowledged, she took a number of these pictures, and in the later days, we sort of handed the camera back and forth, especially when one person had the vision, had it framed and needed to take the picture. And so Carol
And we
was
can
my
no
partner.
we can no longer remember who took what pictures.
That's okay. That's okay. Then you both took all of them.
Yeah, well,
That's
yes.
it.
Yeah, standing up in a kayak, I'm picturing that. That's a little scary.
Yeah.
Crocodiles around. I think you were a risky type when you were younger. I don't know. That's
Yeah,
that sounded
not
risky to
anymore.
me. All right. Any more questions? This has been fabulous. Thank you so much. I've been sort of anticipating this one for quite some time.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you
Alex.
for providing the opportunity, and I'll look forward to seeing some of you guys at the picnic. Those of you who are in SLO County, those of you who are down south, good luck as your semester starts next week. I imagine it's going to start, and you're going to have in-service the next 2 days down at Cypress. Oh boy, I hope it's gotten better than it was that I remember. Oh yeah, yeah, and SLOs and every section, every course, every student. Yep.
I'll
So,
say, Alex, I'm here in Oregon with my family right now, and I was gonna log off early to hang out with them, but they actually logged on with me to listen because this was so interesting, and
Yep.
they all sat and listened to the PowerPoint presentation.
you can
So,
catch Bill Clinton later.
yeah, no, DNC is playing in the other room, and they picked Latin American rainforests.
Thank you very
choice.
I think
much.
that said it all.
Everybody else on this
Stephen,
call.
Jim, Sue, and everybody else, Joe and Les, for coming down here. And hopefully, those of you who aren't local, I'll get a chance to see you again sometime when I get my courage up to head down the 5 freeway and the 101 and the 405. That's courage.
Right.
Taking off into a rainforest. Oh, that's easy. There's no problem with that. Seeing a poisonous snake. Yeah.
Lots of
Being stuck in
poison,
traffic on the
poisonous things.
405. Ugh.
Yeah. Right. Lots of poison in LA traffic, I think.
Yeah. All right. I guess you guys
All
are
right.
gonna.
Yeah, lots of people have already logged off but I will tell you that in addition to the picnic, we're going to try doing the general meeting in person next time, which should be fun. I'm a little worried about COVID, coming and going. But we are going to give it a try. You'll get some information in your email about that really soon. So stay tuned.
Good stuff.
All righty.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thanks, you
Thank you,
guys.
Alex, so much.
Okay.
Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Good
Alex.
night.
and
I'm going to bail off before my computer loses
it,
battery.
guys. Yeah. All right. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.